My name's Terry Rice. I'm a journalist with Entrepreneur Magazine and host of the podcast Reclaim in Advance. And this is The Signal, brought to you by Fiverr. But it's not just a video series. It's a modern guide to navigating business complexities designed to steer you towards clarity, profitability, and growth. On today's show, we have Jason Feifer, Editor-in-Chief of Entrepreneur Magazine. Let's hop into it. Jason, I am glad to have you here today. And I see behind you have this book called Build for Tomorrow, which you clearly wrote. So I'm curious, what's one key takeaway from that book?
Yeah, the key takeaway is if you wrote a book, put it behind you in videos so that people see it. No, the key takeaway is this. I wrote that book because I realized that the most successful people have developed a unique personal relationship with change. And that unique personal relationship enables them to grow and build in ways that others couldn't. And I wanted to understand what that was so that I could share it with others. And that is the guiding force of the book. The book lays out a 4-point plan for how to navigate change, how to find new opportunities in change. But I would say the big takeaway is you have to start by thinking about what is change to you. Challenge yourself to think about what are you when everything around you changes? What is a mission statement you can create for yourself? A way to describe yourself in which every word is carefully selected because it is not anchored to something that's easily changeable. What does that mean? Consider the difference between me saying I am a magazine editor, very easily changeable. All it takes is getting laid off from a magazine, then I'm not a magazine editor anymore, versus I tell stories in my own voice. Can't take that away from me. Doesn't matter what happens in my life, doesn't matter what changes in my life. I can always tell stories. I have a distinct voice. That's where we need to be. We need to understand our unique relationship with change. We need to understand who we are in times of change so that we know what our transferable value is and we know what is always steady about us, even when everything else changes.
Let's talk about some big changes that you've experienced and I've experienced as well, which is fatherhood. Mm-hmm. So as an entrepreneur and as the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine, how do you balance being a father and doing all these other things as well?
Not very well. I mean, if you find a parent who says they know how to balance this, then show them to me because I don't know. For context, I have a 5 and an 8-year-old, 2 boys, very energetic. And here's what I have found. I was really worried before I had kids that having kids would eat up so much of the time that I would have available to my work that my work would suffer, that I wouldn't progress in my career the way that I wanted to. Interestingly, the reverse has happened, which is that my career accelerated after I had kids. And believe me, the kids are it's a very hard balancing act, very hard. But what I found is that having kids forces you to be more intentional about your time than you ever were before in your life. And you just have to follow that logic. I started to realize I needed to think about my time in terms of outcomes. So if I have an hour ahead of me, maybe before kids, I would say, I don't know, maybe I'll sit down and watch TV for an hour, or I'll flip around Twitter for an hour, no more. Now I think in a month, in a year, what would I like to say I have because of what I did in this hour now? Time in terms of outcome. Sometimes that is, I would love people to see the book that I wrote. And so I'm going to spend this time working on the next chapter. But also it could be, a year from now, I want to make sure I have good, better relationships with my children. So I'm going to spend some time with them. It's not just about work, but it is about being incredibly intentional about your time so that you can make sure that you are maximizing what you have.
So I would say my career definitely got better after having children because that's how I met you. When our
thanks.
Kids were attending this event here in Brooklyn. But I'm wondering, on your end, I know that you spend a lot of time building your network here in New York. And again, as a father, as someone who's super busy, as an entrepreneur and editor-in-chief, that's more challenging these days. So how do you not just build, but how do you nurture your relationships with your network?
This is a for real crazy thing that I do. I have a Google sheet, like a spreadsheet called Good Contacts. It's bookmarked. I'm looking at it right now. It has everybody who I meet who I want to stay in touch with in there, divided up into tabs. There's like media and personalities and public speaking and whatever. And so when I meet somebody interesting, Terry, when I met you and I got your email address, I put you in there. And I have friends. Jordan Harbinger is a great example. Jordan Harbinger is an incredible podcaster, very popular, who is really rigorous about this. He goes further. He has an actual CRM. Like you would track potential sales prospects, where he puts his contacts in, and then he sets reminders in 6 months, follow up, just check in. I get texts from Jordan like every 6 months. He's just like, hey, what's going on? And we chat, and it's great. I don't do that. Instead, what I do is just every so often I go through the good contacts thing. I think, who have I not been in touch with? Who could I check in with? Who could I just email and say, hey, I love that thing that you were doing. It's just about being incredibly proactive, but also about being organized, because the thing is, the thing that I just told you may sound like I'm being ingenuine with people because I'm putting them on a spreadsheet. It's really the opposite. It's just me recognizing that I can't remember everybody top of mind all the time as much as I would like to. So instead, I need some technology to help me so that I'm being mindful of who I want to develop ongoing relationships with. So just start that right now. Create a spreadsheet. Start throwing people in it. And then make a reminder. 2 months later, go into that spreadsheet. Look through. Who should you check in with? I can't tell you how important that will be in your network going forward.
Amazing. So that's one thing we can do better to build our network as well as our business. But you also have a newsletter called One Thing Better. And I'm curious, for everyone listening and watching, what is one thing they can do better to grow their business? And how do they even identify what that is to them?
Oh, yeah. Well, that was a very nice transition to One Thing Better. I will use the name One Thing Better as part of the answer here, which is to say that you need to double, triple, quadruple, make sure you understand exactly who your audience is, and make sure that you're communicating to them in the way that's most relevant to them. The most mind-blowing shifts that I have heard in business tend to come when a company realizes that its true customer is not exactly who it thought its customer was. I remember, for example, talking to the founder of SimpliSafe, which is a home alarm system. SimpliSafe was created for renters because I think one of the founders had their apartment broken into. And they launched this thing for renters. They designed the product for renters, made it incredibly easy to set up for renters who can't knock into walls. And they released the product, and the growth was really slow. They couldn't figure out why. Started to do some market research, discovered that even though they had made this thing for renters, they had designed it for renters, they had marketed it to renters, homeowners were the ones who were buying this product, despite what this company was doing to reach who it thought its audience was. And because they realized that, they made a change. They started shifting towards homeowners. That's why the company exploded. That's why you've heard their name. You need to make sure you're in touch with your customer enough that you understand exactly who they are and exactly what their pain points are and exactly the language that you need to use to relate to them, to show them that you understand them. This may sound obvious, but I am telling you there is an entire industry of consumer insights researchers out there because entrepreneurs often overlook it, or they often think they know their customer better than they do. And I said this is related to One Thing Better. How is that? It's because I went through this process myself with my newsletter. My newsletter used to be called The Feifer 5. What does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. Guy named Feifer making things that are 5. What? It was really slow growth. I changed it to actually the title of the book, Build for Tomorrow. Get a little bit better. But it wasn't until I tried to understand who is my audience. They're primarily, honestly, very busy solopreneurs and career-minded people who don't have a lot of time for newsletters. And yet they want to improve. And so they're at this tension point. I don't have a lot of time to improve. I want to find things that can help me improve. That's what led me to restructure my entire newsletter to call it One Thing Better, which was an easy way to signal to people, this is not going to overwhelm you. It's going to be really simple and straightforward. It's one thing you can do each week. That by itself, and then figuring out how to write and really deliver on that promise, that is what unlocked growth for my newsletter, is what can unlock growth for you.
So, Jason, you're the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine. You know what's going on in the world of entrepreneurship, but there's clearly a lot of noise out there as well. So, and keeping in line with the theme of the show, like, what is the signal through the noise that entrepreneurs listening should be honing in on?
I think that if we're going to use signal and noise as a metaphor here, to me, in entrepreneurship, the noise is aloneness. The noise is, I got to do this myself. The noise is, I got to start from scratch. The signal is community. What I have found in having deep personal conversations with entrepreneurs, because to me, entrepreneurship is not just about work. It's about your life. I've found that everybody is going through the exact same things, but often they're doing it alone because they think that it's just happening to them. And look, this can be like about emotional things, and it can be about feeling lonely and whatever, but it could also just be you hit a revenue ceiling. You're growing and then you just stopped and you can't figure it out. And now you're incredibly frustrated and you're like lying in bed at night. You can't fall asleep because you're just thinking to yourself, what am I missing? Why is this not working? But here's the thing. So many other people are doing that too. They're all going through that exact same thing. And the more that you are willing to be open about that and connect with others about it, the more in which you are going to develop a community that can help each other. And I this is not me pleading for everyone to just do like performative vulnerability. I don't think that that's good. It's not about just throwing your heart onto a table. This is about being open about challenges and also being solution oriented and being willing to connect with others and have those kinds of conversations where you're able to say, oh, I was actually going through something very similar. It was really, really difficult. And then I figured this thing out and, it didn't quite work, but then it led me to this other thing. And the more open we can be and the more we can build community together. Sometimes you join communities. There are incredible online communities that you can join. Sometimes it's just about building relationships among the people who you meet and opening those doors. That's where the signal is. It's about doing this together. People are open to it. They just don't know that you are until you show them.
So as an entrepreneur, you're often just doing a million things, right? You're running in so many different directions and then complaining you don't have enough time to get it done. So how can you just get clear on what you should be working on? Like what's the signal in regards to that?
Yeah, it's so common, and I feel it too. Here's a question you should be asking yourself of everything you do at all times. What is this for? And I realize that sounds simple, but let's play it out. You need to know the answer to what is this for. And if you don't know the answer, then it may not be worth doing. And the answer can change. And when I say what is this for, I mean, how does this drive towards your ultimate goals? How does this contribute to progress forward? Here's a really interesting way of thinking about it. Content. What is content for? People often ask me, Jason, you talk a lot about change and the future, and yet you also edit a print magazine, which I hold in my hands right now, a print entrepreneur magazine. Print has been around for decades. People say print is dead. It's not, but why? And here's the thing. If you asked the question, what is content for, decades ago, you would have had a simple answer. Content is for monetization. It's easy. You sell ads against it. You sell subscriptions to it. Make tons of money. That was the publishing industry decades ago. Now, I'll tell you, and this isn't just me talking about entrepreneur. This is the entire media industry. Much, much harder. Much, much harder to sell ads. Much, much harder to sell subscriptions. That's just fact. So, okay, what is content for? Is there a reason to continue to do it? We need to answer that question because answering that question also gives you the way forward. To me, the answer is content is no longer just for monetization. And in fact, I think over time, it may not be for monetization at all. So what's it for? It's for relationships. That's what it's for. Because when you consume content that you like, you trust the person or the brand that provided that content. You build a relationship with it. Terry, you produce content, I produce content, and people feel like they have relationships with us because of that. So now the question is, what can you do with that relationship? Because that relationship is trust, and you can sell products and services to people who trust you. And so the question that we ask at Entrepreneur that I'm mostly excited about, frankly, at Entrepreneur. I mean, look, I love making a magazine. I love serving entrepreneurs with great content. But like the question that I'm most excited about is, because people trust us because of the content, what else can we deliver to them? What other products and services can we deliver to them because they trust us because of the content? Asking what is it for will either lead you to great new ideas, or it will make you realize the thing that you're doing right now no longer serves the function that it used to in your ecosystem, in your goals, and it's time to put it away, which is also fine, because then you can find something else that is for what you need now.
Amazing. Jason, thanks for this. I appreciate your time.